Welcome to the Energetic Psyche, a weekly podcast hosted by yours truly, Dr. Adrian Campbell. This week for episode 44, I have Kate Greer Dickson to chat about her journey from Harvard and journalism at NYU into Buddhism, teaching yoga, and studying Jungian psychology. Thank you so much for joining us. Please note there will be a short guided practice at the end for all to enjoy. So welcome to the Energetic Psyche, a weekly podcast hosted by yours truly, Dr. Adrian Campbell. This week for episode 44, I have Kate Greer Dickson to chat about her journey from Harvard and journalism at NYU into teaching yoga, studying Buddhism, and studying Jungian psychology. A little bit about Kate. Kate is a student and teacher of Hatha Yoga for 20 years, a committed Vajrayana Buddhist practitioner, and an apprentice Dharma teacher under her teacher, Lama Tsultrim Allione. She began earnestly practicing yoga and meditating while in journalism school and working at ABC News. After simultaneously working at ABC and teaching yoga, she left her job to teach yoga full-time and went on to run trainings, workshops, and retreats. During this time, she gave birth to her 2 young sons and was able to be with them a lot. As her sons entered school, so did Kate, this time returning for a master's in counseling psychology at Pacifica Graduate School, where she is currently completing her PhD in depth psychology. Kate is also a certified Feeding Your Demons teacher and facilitator, and delights in assisting and leading retreats, offering yoga, meditation, and shadow work. Kate, thank you so much for joining me. I am so excited about our conversation today.
You are such a dear to have me. I'm so happy to be here. And, it's like filling my cup, of course, as well, just to have an enriching conversation with someone who I admire.
Oh,
so, yeah. So it's really sweet. And, I actually had this really wonderful dream. I'm just going to open with a dream.
Yeah, please.
Jungian psychology, we love images.
Oh, yes, we do.
In college, I had this really important dream where I could perceive my own inner being as a kind of like gold light that was sort of fluttering around me, like little specks of my own sort of like soul matter.
Yeah.
Like golden dust. And I was on a hilltop, and this dear friend of mine was also on the hilltop, and we were approaching each other. And as we got closer and closer together, his gold dust and my gold dust like went crazy. It got more and more wild, more and more active. And then when we got really close together, it was like an explosion.
Oh my gosh, what a lovely dream.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the vibe here.
I love it. And so for everyone listening and watching, Kate and I actually met in Sicily, of all places. Yeah. So we both went to Pacifica. Well, I've graduated. You're still finishing your dissertation, right?
It is true. ABD.
And we were both presenting at the conference out in Sicily, the IAAP Euro conference, and found each other. And we're like, Pacifica.
Did not avoid each other.
Yeah, it was lovely. There were 4 of us from Pacifica all together, which was fantastic. And we had a great dinner. And I just had to bring her on the show because she's cool. So I'm excited that we've come together in all our sparkly goodness for this.
Me too.
Yes. So the episode is about radical hope, which I think is so important and so needed in today's world. But before we get completely into that, I want everyone to get to know you a little bit. So let's start with kind of like, who are you? Where did you come from? And how'd you get where you are now?
Well, as I was saying, we couldn't avoid each other in Sicily, in part because we are wildly American.
Yeah. even with all my Sicilian roots, I'm 5'10". There's no avoiding it.
Yeah. I was like, oh, West Coast? I'm getting a West Coast vibe. Yeah. So I'm actually from the East Coast, though, West Coast at heart. So I grew up in New England. I wound up going to Harvard College, which extended my stay in New England. I was like very sad about the weather, but felt like I couldn't turn that down. So I was like, fine. And I stayed, and it was wonderful. And then I actually had a little stint to my family's like, oh, where I don't even know if I told you this. I moved to Colorado and was a ski instructor professionally after college.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
I know.
You know what?
I was like,
I dropped out of school and joined the military, so you're good.
I was like, it's cool. It's cool. I already applied and got accepted and a full ride into grad school. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, I will go back to school, but I really did.
Just need a minute.
I love skiing. I grew up racing and I was like on the ski team in high school and college.
Awesome.
And simultaneously also along the way. So my senior year in college, I switched my major and I had to drop ski team. I had actually been the co-captain my junior year. And I was like, that's a lot of time. I cannot graduate on time and do that. So
that's a big decision.
It was big. It was big. But I found this degree program, political philosophy, that felt so applicable.
Yeah.
Like in real life. And I just was like, I have to do this, you know. So I did it. But that was when I discovered yoga, because my friend who'd quit rowing also was like, hey, our coach forced us to do this. I really think you're going to be into it, you know.
Right.
Hi there. So yeah, I'm happy to hear them. I'm imagining them. You know?
Yes, my wild beasts.
Yeah, sweeties, totally. So anyway, yeah, yoga was born in me around that time in college, and then I kind of like discovered it when I went back to New York grad school after my ski bum year.
Can you pause for just a second?
Of course.
I need you guys to calm the fuck down. It's fine. Thank you. I literally just walked out there and said, I need you guys to calm the fuck down.
I could.
And they all sat down and just looked at me and I went, thank you.
Sorry, Mom.
Exactly. Okay. I apologize.
It's fine.
Let's go back. So your friend was doing rowing and said, our coach forced us to do this. I really think you're going to like it.
Yeah. So my, 6'2", which is like a foot taller than I am actually, friend was like, come to yoga with me. And it was like love at first down dog. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, this makes so much more sense. I'm not having to beat anyone, because my whole life being active with my body had meant being in competition with someone I hadn't really been into. But skiing was so cool because it was very indirect competition. You always raced by yourself. And it was a very supportive sport too. So it wasn't that intense. But I like teaching way better. So
yeah, and that was one thing from yoga for me too, is that, and I will say, so I worked with Veterans Yoga Project and have for years and years. And it's one of the things about getting vets into yoga, including myself, is we are so competitive in nature. And with yoga, it's like letting that go. And then I often find that we end up competitive with ourselves and then getting into a space where we can even let that go. Because it really is just being with your body,
Yeah. Getting better and better at loving yourself. Totally. Yeah, I know. It's very psychological in nature. So it wasn't really surprising that I sort of went from like, when I went back to the East Coast from teaching skiing in Colorado, I went to NYU for journalism school, and I was like stir crazy because I'd been outside and active 8 hours a day in Colorado. And so I was like, oh man, remember how you really liked yoga? Go back to yoga. Well, actually, I didn't even remember that at first. First, I went to classes. Did I tell you about that?
Did you tell me about what?
The hip hop dance classes.
No. I love that you're as weird as me. Please.
Well, I was like, that looks much more fun than the elliptical machine. So I was excited for these hip hop dance classes, and I could do like the freeze and all the moves where you like are, throwing your body up in the air. Basically,
that's cool.
Like climbing and stuff. Right. I was always into that. I would have loved gymnastics, but broken myself. So a blessing that I didn't. But yeah, so the teacher was like, have you tried yoga? Because you're really good at like the moves. But then it was all the stylistic stuff where I'd be like, and I was so white, and he was like, "You need to stop." So,
Oh my God.
yeah, but the yoga was a beautiful discovery. And I graduated from journalism school and started working at ABC News, but simultaneously, I graduated from my first yoga teacher training program. And I ended the program like vegan and teaching immediately. I was asked to start teaching right away. So I started teaching and working at ABC at the same time.
Okay.
And I was kind of like toggling the two because I kept being offered more opportunities to teach yoga. And, ABC was like very glamorous. I was working with an anchor. It was like our office was between Barbara and Diane. And
Fancy.
yeah, like it was like a career path
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And I was very fortunate to even be in that position. But ultimately, in terms of like the direct path of helping people, and I've always been such a like little altruistic trooper, yoga totally won out. It was like immediate payoff seeing how helpful it was. And I ran out of vacation time because I kept being asked to teach and like start to travel, teach workshops and retreats. And so I left ABC News and taught yoga full time, lightened my load a bit for babies. When I had my two boys. And then during the course of yoga, that was also when because as we both know, teaching yoga is so psychological in nature, right? You see so much about people's attitude toward themselves on the mat. You see how hard we are on ourselves.
Yes.
And it's not like you do that, just you. Like we all
we do it.
We all do that, So I was gaining some of these insights through that experience by also seeing a tremendous amount of abuse of power in the yoga world.
I have heard a lot about this and feel very fortunate that I have not encountered it.
I'm so happy for you to have had that experience because a lot of people have not been so fortunate. A lot of sexual abuse by yoga teachers, which is not called sexual abuse because there aren't professional enough standards still. Just inappropriate sexual contact between teachers and students, certainly outside the boundaries of their relationship commitments. And then in addition, there's also a lot of sort of like guru therapist, almost like proselytizing sometimes with these bigger personality sort of celebrity figure yoga teachers. And I think as the American or Western psyche at large becomes more savvy and more sophisticated, gaslighting is now like a known term.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like as a culture, we are growing. We're becoming more educated about psychology, I think. So I think, honestly, to be truthful, like some of the stunts that were pulled in yoga 20 years ago, I don't think could fly now.
Right.
But I saw some stuff. Right. And I saw a lot of like overstepping the boundaries of, scope and experience of a yoga teacher who maybe hadn't even gone to college to like being a pseudo therapist, life coach to someone they had just met in a public sphere with like no boundaries, no container, no safety. Like, we're going to fix that. We're going to get you talking to your mom in front of like 100 people kind of stuff. Like, what does this have to do with headstand? Like,
there is a lot of, how about this? There are too many people in healing spaces, I'll say in general, that overstep their boundaries. I mean, so I'm a coach, not a therapist. And as a coach, I almost hate to call myself that sometimes because of the amount of coaches who are so undertrained and over practicing.
I mean, you have a PhD.
Right. Like at this point, I'm like, well, and my coach training program was a year long. It cost $10,000. Like it wasn't like an afternoon.
A weekend. Yeah.
You know? And then, and then I got a master. I have a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD all in psychology. So like, yeah, I'm pretty good. But the best thing about it is I know very clearly where the boundary is. And I refer like half my clients to therapy.
I love that. Right.
But
yeah.
there's a lot of people
educated as a therapist
that
but they don't think I do it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I've had a spiritual mentor before that I talked to when I was, because I'm going back to school to get my master's in counseling so that I can do therapy legally and feel good about myself. And I was chatting with him and he was like, I said, I'm trying to decide if I should go back to school. And he said, well, you're a Reiki master? I said, yeah, I mean, I have been now for, 10 years. And he's like, then just call it spiritual counseling. And then you don't have to get your master's and you don't have to get licensed. And I was like, yeah, but that kind of feels icky to me. Like I do spiritual mentoring like right now, but that's what I call it. I don't call it counseling because that's illegal. But anyways, there's a lot of gray areas there. And I think like it's one of the reasons that I really on this show and in a lot of spaces talk a lot about having strong self-agency and doing your research and making sure that the people you're going to are actually like qualified to be working with you in whether it's experience or education, but just making sure that they're actually qualified.
I'd rather be guilty, and I think you too, of underselling.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I can't even imagine like what it would feel like to accidentally harm somebody because I practice outside my scope.
Right. And that's exactly what motivated me to go back to school for psychology. And I had considered it for a long time because I'd been the lucky recipient of wonderful therapy as a child. It was like my first spiritual teacher, truthfully. I had this beautiful therapist who was outside my atheist home, where I was kind of like, but what about all the magic? Aren't you all seeing all this? You know what I mean? I was like, I do. And both my parents were lawyers and there was no emotional communication. I was like, but feelings are the most important thing.
Right. And they're like, no.
And they're like, we don't do God or feelings.
Right.
So my therapist was huge. Like that was the biggest gift by my parents, that they were willing to offer me that space and an adult with a different skill set and capacity, because they just were like, we can't do that.
Right.
And we know it's good for you, but we can't do that for you.
Oh, that's kind. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. My like emotionally repressed, therapy supportive parents.
That's lovely.
Yeah. So it turned out great for me. I think I'm so grateful. Yeah. Cause I got therapy at a really young age to figure out what was like a pretty privileged existence in the first place, like upper middle class, intact family, like no ACEs, really, so, but just great life skills, a lot of self-reflection and insight that I would never have had in those elementary years. And, those early kernels of self-compassion,
right,
which does spread like wildfire to compassion for other people. So,
which like probably helped you become that little altruistic. What did you call it? Not an altruistic warrior, but like
little Girl Scout.
Yes, helping all the people.
I know, nerd. Yeah. That is, if you've seen the movie Up, with the house on the balloons. Do you remember Russell, the little Boy Scout who wants to help so much?
Yes.
Remember when he's tied up with the hose on the folding metal chair on the blimp, and he's so intent on helping, he's like bouncing up and down trying to get out and going, I want to help. And he comes untied, but then falls down off the edge of the blimp's like ramp into the air, hanging onto the hose, onto the floating house, needing so much more help than if he had just chilled.
Because that's what we do to ourselves sometimes, right?
That has been the greatest.
We completely forget about our own self and our own needs because we're trying so hard to help others.
Yes. That's been my like chill Russell moment.
Yeah. It's funny
So,
that yoga got you into school for therapy, and Reiki is what got me into school for psychology, because these Eastern, or I'll just say non-Western traditions, right? Access us so deeply, or help us access ourselves so deeply. And I know from my clients, like, things would come up and I would feel helpless because I couldn't do more for them and I wanted to.
well, and like me, I'm sure you didn't want to overstep. You were
Right,
like,
exactly.
oh, you were like, I don't have any business talking about your childhood sexual trauma.
Yeah, like, things would
I
come up and I'd be like,
needed to talk to you about that.
okay, great. Have a nice day.
And in the early aughts, it wasn't even part of yoga education to know how to refer out.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that should have been the most basic part of our education, is like, this is what you're not qualified to do. You're not a medical expert. You're
Right.
not a mental health expert. You're
But
not.
see, and that, I think that's the blending of two cultures, right? Because in India, it's different.
Totally. And, we're not of that culture. And also, even just having like a low level of psychological education to understand about projection,
Right.
and to understand that your students and clients are going to see and perceive you differently than you do yourself.
Right.
And that it's your responsibility as the healer, teacher, therapist, whatever it is, right?
Understanding that you have a certain level of authority innately, because of the
have
position
power
that
bestowed to you,
right.
because of that hierarchical projection.
Yeah.
And that's what was really super missing in the yoga world. And I fear still is too much. And in so many spiritual communities, of course, that's like the sort of guru thing. So Lama Tsultrim was a huge gift for me as a teacher, because through yoga, I was introduced to Buddhism. I'd always been drawn to meditation. I started meditating like right away, however I could. And even was going on solo meditation retreats at a little cabin in the woods in a Sufi community for years before I discovered Buddhism, because I just had that call.
Right.
And when I met Lama Tsultrim Allione, I really appreciated so many things about her, including that she was a Western woman and a mother, that she blended Western psychology. She's not trained as a therapist, but has like a real interest in Jung's works and is quite well educated in that way, just like a lot of reading and a lot of openness to different therapeutic modalities.
Sure.
So pretty hip that way, for sure. So I loved that fusion. And I also loved how real she was, how accessible and accountable she made herself, and that I was like, she's not going to try and sleep with me.
That's always a bonus in this space.
Great lady, my current age, and like, I'm safe.
Yeah.
And that Sangha was heavily female. And I was like, I don't know if my introduction to Buddhism would have been the same if it hadn't been such a heavily female Sangha. But to just know that, like, I wasn't going to be pressured or, it just felt totally safe in that way. The container was safe.
And can you define the term Sangha?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Sangha is community. Or I really like to put it in the context of the three jewels, which are these sort of three foundational pillars of Buddhism. The three jewels are the Buddha himself, not necessarily as a historical figure, but really, I think, as this the model of the awakened mind, of the most realized or individuated self, So especially if we're translating this out of Buddhism, I'd say it's like there's the Buddha, like the ideal, whatever that is for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there are the teachings, the Dharma, right? Which is both like studying and contemplating, but also practicing. And again, I think that could be any element of spirituality, but like that your spiritual life is getting some energy. That's like the second tier,
Yeah.
And then the third tier, which you'll notice is the foundation, it's wider. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the community.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because the community and not doing it alone is what makes spiritual practice feel possible.
Right.
It's this like bedrock of relationships and care and love and safety, family, that feeling. Kula, the word that's used most commonly in yoga communities, kula actually is most commonly translated as family.
Nice. Yeah, you know, it's that is exactly what I have noticed from a lot of, we'll say, spiritual but not religious people, that they're missing is community. And, you know, I have somebody dear to me that's been going through a lot, and they've left Christianity, but they miss having a church to go to, right? And so I've actually gone to 4 different churches with them in town to help them try and find that spiritual community, and nothing is fitting. And it's very difficult, I think, if you're non-religious or you don't choose a certain specific way of being, to find community.
Right. Yeah. So I have 3 quick responses to that. Such an interesting point. One of which is, I think, a pitfall of not having a community, especially as a spiritual practitioner, let alone teacher or healer. So you don't have anyone holding you accountable.
Yeah, you can end up in that like spiritual addiction.
No one's there watching you not do the thing. Yeah. So, you know, in addition to all the like beautiful aspects of community, getting that like love and support and guidance and people you can rely on, there's also that mirror element of being like, I've got something in there, you know? Yeah, that's helpful. We need that. We really do. Like, if your sister's not going to tell you, who's going to tell you?
Right.
You need someone to tell you, or your therapist or whoever. But truthfully, therapist is not a community because it doesn't exist outside that privatized, very contained relationship. Right. So there's something that happens in broader community. And there was this huge soul loss with COVID because so many in-person gatherings stopped happening. And it really took a hit both for yoga studios, retreats, meditation gatherings and retreats. And it still is.
There's still a lot of people who are like, we can do it online now. And I'm like, it's not the same. Like most of my clients are, we honestly just do phone. We don't do video. But if there's an option to be in person, like being in person is nice.
It's really different. Yeah. It has a different quality. And the last thing I was going to say for your friend, CrossFit.
Well, I have my own opinions on CrossFit, but
Me too. But I'm just saying, like, as an extreme pendulum swing, because I did read this article called "CrossFit is My Church" because people are looking for community. Yeah, you know, and so maybe it's not CrossFit, maybe it's ballroom dancing, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's joining a non-denominational chorus like the one I participated in. Yeah. So fabulous. So finding any kind of community doing something you already enjoy is a source of spiritual support.
Absolutely. Because that's the thing, is that like spirituality isn't just about like praying, but it's about the way that we're living our lives and all the different ways that we find to bring energy to our souls. Right. And I guess in the Buddhist place, we would say to live our Dharma. Yeah.
100%. Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's soul expansion, and it's that, tapping into that sort of innate sense. And I feel like we're pretty close to we're mostly caught up in my life story, I think. To the
cool.
In that, we got to why I went back to school for psychology. As you know, for the Master's in Counseling program at Pacifica, which is like the pre-licensure therapy masters, they do require a Jungian thesis, right? this additional add-on that's not required by the state or anyone. So I wrote my master's thesis on this wonderful practice, feeding your demons, devised by Lama Tsultrim, which is derived from a traditional Tibetan Buddhist practice called Chu, which is done with like a drum and a thigh bone trumpet and a bell, and you're singing in Sanskrit and Tibetan and visualizing, and it's like not super accessible for Westerners.
Right. But it sounds like a blast.
It's super fun. It's super fun, not super accessible. So Lama Tsultrim devised this very like sort of Jungian Gestalty adaptation of Chu called Feeding Your Demons, which is a led visualization. And it's basically like a radical self-love practice.
This is what you led in Sicily, correct?
100%.
Yes. Yes. So I went through that practice and I thought it was really lovely. Yeah.
I'm so glad. Yeah. It's really just an opportunity to be like so sweet to this sort of fragmented part of yourself that you've like locked up and not wanted to deal with usually. And then you transform your relationship to that energy and have access to this sort of the enlightened or unencumbered aspect of that energy. You know, in Buddhism, we talk about how and this is kind of akin to Jungian psychology, talking about the shadow and the gold of the shadow. You know, that the subconscious doesn't just contain our nightmares. It contains our most like brilliant dreams too, like that Marianne Williamson quote, right? Yeah.
Well, and it's honestly, the practice is also reminiscent of something that I learned in my coaching training, which is feeding your gremlins. And so it's the same thing. It's connecting with those inner parts of yourself that are scary and, you know, giving them love and nurturing them and helping to change the narrative, right? Just transforming that energy. So I think like when you led the practice, I was like, oh, it was actually comfortable and recognizable for me. And I was like, I get it. We're loving shadow. Come here.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
So a domain name that I have done nothing with but own is called lovingyourshadow.com.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's totally what it is, you know? And in Buddhism, that idea of the sort of dark and gold aspects of the shadow is this idea of an encumbered pattern, something that's like not serving us, you know, encumbered, like clunky. I'm carrying too many bags. I can't move. It's not right. To the enlightened aspect, the part of us that like actually already knew all along,
right?
You know, because this foundational idea of awakening or enlightenment in Buddhism is that at our core, we are innately already that. That we don't need to do anything to achieve that. It's actually just like an unfettering, a letting go of all the ideas of Kate I keep plastering onto myself.
Exactly. It's the peeling away and a releasing and a removing and it can be done, you know, in an aggressive way where we're peeling and removing, or it literally can just be the letting go, which I think is really beautiful. It just requires patience.
Yeah. And certainly as a Reiki master, you're aware of all the different layers from which we can release, right? It can be through the soma, it can be on an energetic level, it can be through talk therapy, through meditation, through visualization, through breath work, through sound.
Yes. And that's the thing is that, you know, one of the things I teach is that you may need to explore all these different places to let go of all of this stuff, because some things are going to work better for other stuff, you know? So allowing yourself to explore and be creative. And like I said, patience, you know, like try this, try that, see what sheds with what tools. Cause it's all, you know, I think it's really lovely too, to move into that way, because not only are you letting go, but you're in a practice of allowing. So what needs to be let go or what's ready to be let go can be, without you forcing or yanking or pulling.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful approach to healing. And it's funny because I think another offering, right, in addition to like try everything, or keep trying until you find what really feels like, the right fit for you, is also like whatever you do, especially if it requires some effort on your part. Like even
actually do it.
yeah, like whatever it is, even if it's like going to the acupuncture appointments or going to the yoga classes or getting on the meditation cushion, whatever it is, you have to be motivated to do it.
Right.
The other thing I tell people is like, find a teacher you like. Something fun.
And just because it's challenging or difficult, don't just give up. Like experiment sitting with that.
And like definitely find something you think you can keep doing. Like if you are motivated to continue doing it, that is good. Because if it's too big of a stretch for you, you know what I mean? Like if you're not even a walker and you're like, I'm going to run a marathon, maybe that's not like a realistic, it could be, maybe that's great for you, but like maybe that's too big a, aspiration.
Yeah.
So
maybe start with walking 3 times a week.
Right.
And then walking every day. And then maybe we start jogging.
100%. So when someone who has no existing yoga practice asks me what kind of yoga should I do, I say, find a teacher you like, where you are motivated to continue going to the classes. Once you have a consistent yoga practice, then you're going to naturally be like, oh, there are other yoga teachers. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If that's even your calling. Maybe you love your first yoga teacher and you're going to stay with that person forever. Which is great too. Right? But if you're not established in the routine of whatever that supportive therapeutic modality is, right? Like you just, from a motivational level, find something you're going to keep doing.
Right. Because when I say like try different things for different stuff, yes. And when you find something, like I know a lot of people who will go to training after training after training, but they don't actually put into practice the things that they learn. And they're like spiritually bypassing their growth, right? Or they become like certificate
collectors, as many as I can get.
And I just need to go to 2 more classes and then I'll be ready to do this work, or stuff like that. And I'm always like, let's pause.
Yeah, and I also want to pause to honor my own inner imposter syndrome, right? Because I think we all have that. Anyone who has written or aspires to write a doctorate, a dissertation, we all know like, oh my gosh, I'm a fake. Everyone's gonna find out, So yeah,
no matter how many times I've presented. I mean, I presented internationally now since 2018, right? And even like get in Sicily, I'm like, oh, they're all gonna think I'm stupid. I know I missed something, and then I'm like,
it was great.
None of this is real, Adrian.
No, none of it is real, and it was great. Real. By the way, it was great.
Oh, thank you.
It was like applied and real and relevant about real people who need more resources, as opposed to a more philosophical, like, how is this ever going to get applied in a real way that helps people? Like a lot of those presentations, I love Jungian psychology.
But they stay up in the woo space.
Like for this to get translated into a therapeutic practice.
Well, just like your work. So feeding your demons was your thesis, right?
Yes.
It's something you can do with the theory. It's important. And that's just it, is like, all of this is great. We need this. But if we don't ground it and put it into practice, it's only serving half of what it could.
100%.
Yeah.
And so I want to offer a real life experience of that if we have a little time. But I also, just because we've talked around a lot of this already, name the title of this particular conversation and come back to this idea of radical hope.
Yeah.
Because what is that? And we've already been talking about it. But the reason that we're talking about radical hope on this particular day is because that is the particular focus of my dissertation. Because what I was writing about feeding your demons in a smaller publication, I was like, oh, this is not enough time to talk about bodhicitta. And bodhicitta,
I love that word.
You should. It's a beautiful word because bodhicitta means mind, heart, mind. Yeah. It's usually translated as heart mind. But what's important to understand in a Buddhist understanding is that the mind lives here. This is our highest center of wisdom. This thinks I am the body. This thinks I am only this kind of meat sack. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's definitely not my highest form of wisdom.
Right.
That's like, oh, look at all the gray. That's like not helpful.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So the heart mind is both an aspiration to awaken to benefit all beings, right? So let's slow that down for a second, right? To awaken, in Jungian terms, like to individuate, to become our highest, most integrated self, completely cleared from any neuroses or like cumbersome thought patterns attached to individual ego clinging.
The goal. You know what that reminds me of? It's like when they say, shoot for the stars and you'll land on the moon, right?
100%.
So we're shooting for individuation, we're shooting 100%. For enlightenment, and we're going to get as close as we fucking can.
100%. Yes. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So part of that too, and remember, is that, oh, wait, I am already enlightened. If I remember that as my innate state, that means I don't have to do anything. What I get to do is a lot of letting go of the Kate story over and over and over again. And a lot of arousing compassion for other beings and remembering how incredibly intertwined and interconnected we are.
Right.
To the extent that like harming another being is harming an extension of myself. Not helping another being is like not helping my own child. Yeah. Like, how could I not offer kindness? Right. Not work to ease their suffering. Right? Yeah. So it's this sort of mindset of recognizing through our interconnection or interbeing, as the late Thich Nhat Hanh likes to call it, right? Yeah. Recognizing that we're all in this together, right? Aspiring to do it better so we can all have a better time, which just makes sense, right? Like, don't we all want to have a better time?
Like, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yes, let's have a better time. It's like basic.
We're all here. We might as well make the best of it for each other.
Why don't we just love each other and be like, we are so lucky? Because we are so lucky, And that's another tremendous Buddhist teaching of like how precious this human life is. Yeah. To remember that, to celebrate it, just give gratitude for it. And we're in the gratitude season. Yeah. So the radical hope is remembering and recognizing that because we are all living Buddhas, right? That actual shooting for the stars, it's like a seed. The blueprint's already in us. We have the map to the stars, right? Right. So it's holding that vision of everyone's highest nature that lets us really, I think, offer whatever our modality is, whatever form our love is taking.
Oh, I love that. Whatever form our love is taking. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. In a way that like helps lift people up because we're training ourselves to see that in them. Right. We're like, oh, right. I'm sitting with the Buddha right now. Even though he's in and out of parole and is never going to get off meth. Like I'm seeing that Buddha. Yeah. Right. I see all of the encumberments from his very young, disturbed childhood that led to this situation and have led to these circumstances. Right. Right. But that doesn't change that at his core, he is totally innately perfect. Right. Exactly. And he's nothing to qualify for my love.
Yep. Absolutely. So it's so interesting because over the years, I've studied so many religions, philosophies, expressions of spirituality, and I've gathered all of these into my own little ball of belief and goodness. And like everything you're expressing, I'm like, yes, 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 yes. Because I remember learning all of these things and I'm like, was this when I studied Buddhism? And I'm like, maybe like
you're common across so many different traditions and
right?
lineages, because
It's wild that they're so
all
common,
pointing to the
but so
same
forgotten.
thing.
Yeah.
You know,
We all belong to each other, you know, and that's, you know, I always say, like, whenever I'm in a very difficult situation, I just try to return to love. Like, what would love do in this situation?
that's
And I try to act accordingly. And, you know, and if things are really difficult for me, I'll be like, okay, how can I find a place of compassion here? What does that look like?
Yeah.
Because we all belong to each other. And if we can see, like, you know, the inner Buddha, right? See that spark that we share in the other, it makes it so much easier to be present, I think, in that way.
And I have to add a footnote. I'm sure that anyone who's listening, watching probably already knows, but when that compassion is sparked, it must include ourselves. Just a reminder, everyone. Yeah. Because we're not going to be able to offer that tenderness to others if we don't offer it to ourselves. Right. So we're included, and we're included in the aspiration to awaken. Absolutely. That's another big thing. And I think probably more of us suffer from a doubter syndrome than, you know, the imposter who's like, how could I become enlightened? Wait a minute. You are.
You already are. Just let go of the doubt. And look, there you are.
It's not a qualification. There's no test. Because there's also, and I honestly think that the metaphor from Hindu or yogic philosophy is a beautiful image of this, because the Prem Atma is like the collective soul.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard this metaphor of like a huge mirror reflecting the light of the sun, right? It's like the universal soul.
Sure. Yeah.
And if the mirror falls and shatters into millions and billions of pieces, one for every soul spark on our planet, every sentient being on our planet has a shard of that mirror, the Atman, the individual soul, but it's all reflecting the same sun.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So when you think about it like that, or like Prajnaparamita, the mother of the Buddhas, who is creation itself in Buddhist philosophy, like, how could we not be here for each other? We are all born of love, here to celebrate each other. We're just individual manifestations of a common source.
Right. See, and that's the thing, is like, as I've studied all these different religions, it's insane how similar they all are in the fact that, like, we are all one, we are all connected, right? And what we do to another is also done unto ourselves. I mean, almost every religion I've ever read that I can think of says these same exact things. Yeah. And yet we still struggle and we're still assholes to each other. I mean, and I'm not immune, you know, like, that's why I tell all my clients all the time, it's a practice. Every waking moment is a practice. And we're just trying our best to stay in a place of love for ourselves and others. But yeah, we belong to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I agree. So you want to do a little practice?
Yes. Do you want to do the practice now?
Yeah, I think it's time, right?
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. Let's just do a couple minutes. So if you're listening or watching, if possible, I invite you to close your eyes. If you're driving, please do not do that.
And you can always pause this and
100%. You could come back and do this later in a safe moment, please. Or if you're chopping vegetables, do not close your eyes.
Right. Because if you're listening or watching live, this will be up on YouTube and Spotify later, and you can always come back to the practice after. So just know that. Yeah. You're not going to lose the moment.
Totally. So if you're able to close your eyes, I invite you to do that. And even if you're just listening, I invite you to follow along for this brief body scan. Begin by relaxing your body as much as possible. Notice where you can release tension in your body. Soften your belly as much as possible and take a couple of deeper, fuller breaths. Just trying to relax as much as possible. And then take a moment to think about how you are doing this exercise to help yourself, to offer some even minor improvement to your state of being, your happiness, and how the aspiration to benefit yourself inherently benefits others. So it's not actually a selfish thing at all to take care of yourself for these few minutes. So let yourself just be happy that you're doing something good for yourself and by extension, good for others. And now I invite you to visualize a younger version of yourself. And I trust you to allow whatever age, whatever version of yourself might appear. Notice if you're wearing a particular outfit that you recognize, or maybe you're rocking a certain hairstyle or hat. And most likely, this version of yourself has some things to say to you. There's probably a reason this particular version and this particular age is here. So what I'd like you to do, this might be quietly under your breath or out loud, but try at least moving your lips, is to say, how can I help you? And then please ask, what would you like me to know? And then if you have the capacity in your space, you could even switch seats. Or imagine that you become this younger version of yourself, taking on all of the physical characteristics that you just observed, the posture, the outfit, whatever version of yourself was there, you are that now. Feel what it's like in your body versus your original self where you just were. And I will say the beginning of this answer, and then I invite you again, perhaps quietly or under your breath or out loud, to both repeat the beginning of the answer and then complete it in your own time as this younger version of yourself. So repeating and completing after me. You can help me by. And if your answer is complete, and there's anything specific your original self can do in your daily life or with something physical that they have access to, you might add that on to how they can help you. And then the second question, I'll start the answer. You repeat and complete. What I'd like you to know is. When that answer feels complete, you can switch back to your original seat. Allow yourself to assume your original body and form again. And visualize this younger version of yourself in front of you once more. Noticing how it feels in your original body versus the younger self. And remembering what this younger self told you, how you could be helpful to them. Please imagine that you are offering this younger version of yourself your unconditional support and love in whatever form they want. And you might see this as a river or nectar of love. You might imagine your own very body dissolves into this nourishing nectar. Or if that doesn't feel right, just imagine that this love is flowing toward the younger version of yourself from an infinite supply of nectar. Whatever form of help or support this version needs, you are offering it with as much generosity as possible. And you may notice something's happening to the appearance of this younger version of yourself, perhaps as it becomes nourished or satisfied. Maybe its physical appearance changes. And then wherever you are in the process, you can imagine that this younger version of yourself is totally satisfied and nourished by this nectar. And you can remind them that there is an infinite supply of this love and that you can come back to share it with them anytime. And they can let you know if they need some more. And maybe that signal, some sort of sign or way to contact them, is helpful. And then please imagine that this younger version of yourself dissolves into a beautiful light. And that this light is absorbed into your body, infusing every cell of your being until you are totally merged with this nourished and cared for younger version of yourself. Until he, she, or they are fully integrated and present with you, belonging to you. And with your eyes closed, take a couple breaths just to notice your body and the feeling of your breath. Reflecting on how you feel from this brief exercise. And please offer any benefit that you received as a gift so that you are sharing that benefit by dedicating the merit to the benefit of all beings, including yourself. And when you're ready, you can gently blink the eyes open and maybe without even looking at the screen, just notice how it feels to see. Maybe you feel a little different inside. Thank you so much, Adrian.
Oh, it's lovely, Kate. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Did that work for you?
Yeah, it was really lovely. Yeah, it was really lovely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is like the foundational sort of core practice of feeding your demons.
I thought it felt a little familiar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Shortened, compacted version of
Mhm.
that. And I chose the form, your first being. Demon is from the Tibetan word ladre, which actually means God demon. And again, it's talking about this enlightened and encumbered aspect of the shadow, that those projections of the mind. So it's not really demon in a Christian sense, so much as
right.
encumbered.
Yes, I know. And that's those types of things can get lost in translation, which is why it's important to realize when you're working in cross-cultural applications that languaging shifts and to allow for that. Yeah.
And that's why I appreciate these interdisciplinary discussions so much.
Mm-hmm.
And as you were saying, so many wisdom traditions point to the same truth.
Yeah,
right?
It's incredible. It's
and
incredible.
It's a shame to become so entrenched in dogma and so rigid that we waste energy defending our modality, method, or particular philosophy or the names instead of finding common ways to uplift the
My love's better than yours.
Right? Like, let's get to work helping people. I don't think we need to fight about that.
Yeah, I don't care how you do it. Let's just love each other. Call it what you want. Just love each other. Damn it.
Totally. Yeah. And that is a beautiful thing, I think, about the prolific presence of women in the healing arts.
So if somebody wanted to attend like a Feeding Your Demons workshop or work with you one-on-one, what's one of the best ways they could get a hold of you?
Thank you. Feedingyourdemons.com has so many resources, including a YouTube of my teacher leading the practice. So you could always use her guidance to do it at home on your own, the full practice. Lovely. If you're interested, it's amazing. And the book, Feeding Your Demons, is on Amazon. Really amazing. So if you're interested in being led by someone one-on-one, there's a whole list of Feeding Your Demons facilitators on feedingyourdemons.com. So you might find someone in your area or region. I'm based in Boston, so I'm mostly in New England. I do lead some retreats, so you could find me that way. And I wish everyone so much luck in your journey, whatever it includes. I hope that it uplifts you and makes you want to dance.
Oh, beautiful. So just so you know, in my little vision there, I was dancing. Yes. Skinny twirly skirt dancing. Yes.
Yeah, it's so good. So necessary. We all need more dancing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Right. Yes. Well, Kate, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate your presence so much. And to everyone listening or watching, thank you for joining us. And I hope you have a great week.
Oh, you too. Happy holiday. Happy you're spending it. Gratitude for whatever is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Lots of love. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Energetic Psyche, a podcast that live streams every week, Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I hope you'll join us again in the future. Have a great week.